Hey y'all. I'm just getting started, so I had switched devices, and I am here. Hey, Alexis. So we're about to get started. So, I'm Atiya Myers. This is my second installment of Get Money Mondays. Right now, it's a series that is every other Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Coast time. I will be doing different topics that interest business and entertainment. So if you're an entrepreneur or a content creator, or if you're just trying to learn more about just different things, contracts or different business principles, then this is the series for you. Today, I have 3 topics, as I usually do. My first topic is corporation taxation. My next topic is indemnification. And I'm going to put my AirPods in. I had to switch devices. Hopefully. Okay, I'm still here, everyone. Didn't mean to put everybody on pause. But yeah, so again, my name is Atiya Myers. I will be here to talk about different business topics. My first topic is corporation taxation, and I'm just going to give it a minute or two, and then I'm going to definitely dive right in. So this is my second live, and I'm no expert, but let's see. I am learning how to... Okay. Hopefully it didn't pause. But yes, so I had to switch devices, but I'm here. And yeah, so I'm going to be talking about corporation taxation first. And I'm probably about to go ahead and get started. So if you join me on my last live, I talked a little bit about basically why you should form an LLC and where you should form it and a little bit of the benefits about that. And some of the questions that came up was corporation taxation and basically the differences between corporations and limited liability companies or LLCs. So like I touched on the last time, the laws in each state are different. So in Georgia or in Texas or in California, you're going to have different corporation and different LLC statutes and different rules. But this is pretty generic of a conversation. I will be using California as an example, but my best guess is that your state isn't that far off, but it's definitely always good to check with a licensed attorney in your state. Also, too, this is not meant to be tax advice. You likely need a tax attorney, so I would definitely get a tax attorney if you have more detailed questions than this. This is just basically the generic principles and overview of corporations and how they are taxed. So the first question usually is, what's the difference between a C type corporation and an S corporation? And the biggest difference between the two is that an S corporation is going to be what you call pass-through taxation, meaning that they are not subject to the double taxation that corporations are subject to. So just to go ahead and dig into the second bullet point, what that means is that corporations are taxed from the entity standpoint. So as the profits of the corporation are taxed after your tax expert goes through your deductions and your credits, and then you're taxed from a personal level, whether you're being paid from your corporation and from a salary or through dividends. Again, that amount will also be taxed. So with your S corporation, you don't have the second level of taxation really the first level of taxation that you have with a C corporation. So a C corporation will have the two levels of taxation. So first, it is the profits. Your corporation will be taxed, and then after that, you will be taxed when you receive your dividends or if you're paid a salary. But there are benefits of having the corporation. So one is definitely the liability. There are ways that people go about trying to avoid or kind of minimize the double taxation. So, for example, one thing is that you can take all of your pull out from your corporation if you are an employee of the corporation from your salary and not take dividends. And from doing that, you kind of avoid the taxation of pulling out the dividends by basically kind of reinvesting that money back into your corporation. So that's one way. The tax rate, for the most part, for a corporation is 21%, unless you have a professional corporation. So, for example, for a law firm, the profits are taxed at 35%. So it really kind of depends on what type of corporation that you have. But the difference is as well that there are also a lot of more formalities that corporations have than the LLC. So, for example, for a corporation, you have to have a board of directors, you have to have a set of bylaws, and then you also have to have your annual meetings with your shareholders. So the corporation background and the way that it's set up is just a lot more formal than an LLC. If you joined in on my last live, you can kind of see how the LLC, you can contract away or contract up, for example, different things that the California law already provides, whereas a corporation is going to just be more standard and you're going to follow the statutes and create your bylaws based off of what the law already has written out for you. So that's just really a basic overview of the corporation taxation. When you're trying to decide between what type of entity to form when you start your business, you really do want to look at how many people are being formed, what is the structure, what type of business you have, and you really want to look at the different liabilities. So based off of your liability and the type of profits and taxes that you tax structure that you want to follow, it's really good to really tap into an attorney and discuss this. Entity formation can seem really simple, like boom, maybe an LLC is the right way for you. But again, for example, for a law firm in California, you can't have an LLC. And there might be other rules that your state has that you have to follow prior to just going ahead and filing the LLC and running with it. So it's always just a good idea to talk to an attorney and to learn about the different procedures that you have to follow with owning and operating your corporation in that state. So I don't have any questions. I'm going to go to the next topic, which is indemnification. So if anybody has ever heard of indemnification, it's a pretty kind of standard contract clause that you'll find in some contracts. If you've ever done any service contracts or construction contracts, maybe real estate contracts, things of that nature. If you've done contracts, then you might have seen it. Typically it will be called indemnification clause, or you might see some words like release or relieve of. And so basically what an indemnification clause is, it is a transfer of the liability. So what that means is that you can contract in a way if we are in a business relationship and there is a third party that suffers damages based off of maybe our relationship. So if I'm in construction and I go to your house and I build a deck, for example, and somebody falls through your deck. So an indemnification clause might indemnify you as the deck owner and put all of that liability on me as the contractor. Another example would be a store and I am selling your product and your product injures a third party or a customer of my store, and I have now an agreement with you where I am indemnified, meaning that we have agreed that any liability or any damages that come up on a third party are passed back to the original goods seller and not necessarily the store owner. So those are the types of things that you might, scenarios where you might see in an indemnification clause. It's really important because you kind of want to look for these things when you're signing important contracts, because you're looking at who is responsible for anything that happens. So if there's an injury, if there's damages, if there's something that's foreseeable that maybe you can say, what can go wrong? So really what you want to think about when you're doing anything with business, you really want to make liability a top priority. Who is responsible if somebody suffers damages? What's the highest risk? What is the highest amount that I might end up having to pay? So that's something that is surrounding us all the time, because we pay for insurance. We, everything is a risk analysis for the most part, and you should be doing these things when you sign contracts and agreements. So when you're looking into a contract and you're maybe negotiating something, you want to think about what's the worst that can happen and who will be responsible for that worst thing if it does happen. So that's really what the indemnification clause does. And there's a lot of law behind this 3 to 4 sentence clause in your contract, and it gets really deep. But you really just want to think about it as who is responsible and what will happen if we get sued. So really, the one benefit of an indemnification clause is a trust aspect. So if you're negotiating a contract with somebody and they say, well, I don't want to be responsible for anything that happens based off of my job that I perform for you, then that's kind of a red flag. So you really want to say, if you're working with a contractor or somebody and there are risks in that job that may come up, then the indemnification clause is something that you might want to look into before you sign that contract, because it can come up later if you are trying to avoid liability for something that might not necessarily be your fault, but it was your car or it was your house or it was your store that the incident or the injury happened or where the damages occurred. So that's kind of the thought process that you kind of want to think about. And so the next question is like what to say, because again, it's a negotiation thing. So it looks like legal jargon on the paper, and what you want it to say is just enough to encompass a reasonable amount of risk or liability that you feel comfortable of taking on, or that you feel like the other person or other party should feel comfortable taking on. So that's why I said, if your contractor, for example, says we don't want to take any of the liability that might happen from our job, then that's something of a red flag. But also too, you want to be fair and say, if I, for example, maybe don't keep up my part of whatever of the agreement, then you will not be responsible for the damages. But there's other ways you can draft it to say that I am completely not liable for any damages, but also that might turn away the person that you're negotiating with. So from there, you really just want to always think about what's the worst that can happen, or what the point of signing contracts are, to look at the damages, to look at what's the worst that can happen. What am I agreeing to? And what does it look like if somebody doesn't do what they agreed to do? So that's kind of all related to just contract drafting, reading contracts, signing contracts, negotiating contracts, and ultimately your contract disputes, which will land you in court. And you want to be kind of on the proactive side in negotiating and signing agreements that are more in your favor, or at least that you understand the risks when you're signing something that's not in your favor. So that's pretty much that overhead on that topic. And if I go into my next topic, so this topic is a little bit more for my content creators maybe, or my book writers, so my authors, artists, things like that nature. people more so maybe in the entertainment, but this could apply to your business if you want to get your logo copyright registration for your logo, or if if your business sells t-shirts and you want to look into copyright registration and litigation of enforcing your copyright registration, then this might probably apply to you as well. But I just wanted to briefly touch on copyright infringement, because this is a big thing. You always hear about big brands or big companies stealing from smaller designers or consumers, or just kind of stealing content, quote unquote. So I just wanted to briefly just touch on what it means to have your copyright infringed. And so infringement just basically means like piracy, so theft. Basically, you have a circle of rights, and somebody is stepping inside of your circle. So it's kind of like that. They're infringing on your rights without permission. So they're taking from you. They're taking from you what you're rightfully earned through, for example, your copyright registration. So just wanted to talk briefly about that. So basically, the first question is what is copyright eligible? So for the most part, an expression that is sealed or that is stored in some type of tangible medium, so music or books. You also have kind of dance choreographies. It's a wide range of art, quote unquote, that can be eligible for copyright registration. I do recommend that you get copyright registration, federal registrations for your designs or for your content, whatever that might be. Just to jump down to the litigation standpoint. So nothing really matters if you can't defend it, if you can't enforce it, and if you can't protect it. So all of these things are just pieces of paper if they're not used in your favor, if somebody does infringe on your rights, or if you are being if your person or if your entity is being taken from, in theory, and litigation is there to try to help restore you of whatever it is that you might have been taken from. So I'm really big on just litigation because it is just a tool for remedy in a way that a lot of things just don't have remedy for. And so copyright infringement, if you have an artwork or a song, for example, and you don't have a federal copyright registration, you won't be able to sue in the federal court on behalf of your copyright. And so you really just kind of want to get that. And it could be hard for you to do. It could be expensive for you to do. Let's say if you're a designer, you're pumping out designs every week. You have 3 to 4 new designs. Like, that's your full-time job. That's what you do. It could be, kind of expensive. And you do have common law, copyright rights, but it's just not going to be able to be enforced in the same way, with the same power, and in the same way in your favor, without the copyright federal registration. And so when you want to sue a person that has a copyright registration, if you have an interest in that copyright, so if you're licensing it or if you're the owner of it, for example, you probably have standing to sue to enforce your rights against infringement. So infringement can include copying, distributing, performing. There's different ways that you can infringe on a right of somebody else's copyright. And the biggest thing about that is to really get the permission from the person prior to, or to get a license prior to infringing. So you really want to make sure that your copyrights are federally registered with the Federal Copyright Office, and you want to make sure that you make good evidence and documentation of all ways that your copyrights are being used by the other person. So if they're using it on the internet or selling it, you take screenshots. Just take as much information as you can. and then you'll store all that, and you can kind of just start preparing your complaint and your demand letter. And what you would likely seek is an injunction. So what an injunction can do is it can stop that other person or entity from using your copyrights any longer in whatever ways that they're using it. You can also go for damages, or you can also sue to kind of get the profits of what that company or that person made off of your copyright. So all of these things are options that you can pursue through the court in order to make yourself whole again from having your rights infringed upon. So that is really all that I have on copyright infringements. And so if I don't have any questions, or I'm free to answer any questions if I have any right now. But I do want to invite everyone to follow me on the various social media platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, where I will be uploading this live and other lives and other content that I'll be doing. And if I don't have any questions, thank you for tuning in to my second Get Money Mondays. I hope you're able to learn something. And yeah, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you.